Hi guys, today we'll explore how we can write unit test with dependency injection and MVVM architecture using SwiftUI. So yeah, let's get started. For demonstration, we'll create a TODO application. So I'll divide this series into multiple parts, and for the first part, I'll just focus on creating the list screen that will fetch item from the data layer, and then it will just show them, and it will also allow us to complete the item whenever they are done. So yeah, let's create a new project and name it my to do. You can name it whatever you want. Yeah, so we'll get rid of preview as we don't need it. Yeah, so I like to divide my application into two layers. The one is data layer and the second is UI layer. So data layer is like the state of the application, and that's like the ultimate source of truth. And UI layer just reflects on the state of the data layer. So if user adds a to-do item, basically it will be added to data layer first, and then UI layer will just refresh the items. Yeah, so for the start, we'll create a new group called data, and we'll also create a new group called UI. So and then we'll move this content view inside the UI. So yeah, we have two layers now. For holding the to do item, we'll need a struct. So let's create that. So to do item will basically have ID, title, and is complete flag. So let's create a struct for that. This struct is nothing fancy, but just a class, I can say, or object that can hold the to do items. Struct task, and let's add ID and title and is complete. So yeah, only three things, nothing fancy. Now let's add a repository that will be responsible for managing this task, and we'll name it task repository. So yeah, it's here. Let me make this full screen so it's visible. So task repository will be basically a protocol, and that will be like an abstract thing, and we'll create another class that will implement this protocol. So let's define this task repository, and inside that there's one function that we need right now, and that is get task, that will just return all the tasks. Yeah, very simple one. And now let's define a class that implements this protocol. So now this class will need to implement this get task method. Let's add it. Yeah, so for now we'll not depend on like any real database like SQLite or core data. We'll just store in memory. Let me define a list here. Okay, and then I just need to return this task here, and we are done. Yes, so our repository is ready now. What we'll do is we'll create an initializer here and add a few dummy tasks. As we don't have add task screen, if we don't add any dummy tasks, then user will not have anything to see on the list screen. So for the start, we will add 2 or 3 items. Let's do that. We'll just name it dummy. This is not yet done, and another task is another task is watch Avengers. That's also remaining, and one more task is maybe visit LA. Let's mark it as complete. Okay, so we have 3 tasks, and get task will return those tasks instead of empty list. So we are basically done with our data layer for now. Now what we'll do is we'll use dependency injection that will allow us to use this task repository in UI layer. So for that we'll use Swinject framework. So yeah, let's first add it. And we'll also need UIPilot for SwiftUI navigation, so let's add it as well. This is UIPilot is totally optional. If you don't want to use it and you want to use native navigation view, then that's totally fine, you can use that. Yeah, so we have Swinject ready now. Now to provide this dependency into the UI layer, the dependency can be provided with assemblies. Assemblies are like logical grouping of your dependency. If you have multiple dependencies, then you can create just one assembly. Otherwise, you can create multiple assembly with logical grouping. Like if you have API related 5 dependencies, then you can create API assembly and one for DB assembly and stuff like that. So yeah, it totally depends on your use case, but for simplicity here we'll just create one data assembly. Yeah, so we have it ready now. Let me import Swinject here. Yes, I'll call it data assembly, which will extend the assembly protocol. Yeah, so let me implement this method that is required. Basically what we'll need to do is we'll need to provide some guidance for the dependency injection. If somebody asks for a type of task repository, then provide task repository implementation object. So the object scope will be container. That means no matter how many times somebody asks for dependency, provide the same one, kind of a singleton, instead of creating a new one each time. So yeah, we have our assembly ready now. So now we'll need a middleman that will provide that will hold this dependency for us, and it will provide to UI layer whenever needed. So let me do it now. Injector, yeah, import Swinject. So this will be kind of a static class which will just hold our assembly. Static where assembler, and we'll create one function init graph, which will call on application on create. Okay, now let's create our assembler. Assembler is like a kind of group of assemblies. So if you have multiple assemblies, you can create one assembler, and that assembler can be used to provide the dependencies. So as we have only one dependency here, we'll provide only one, but assembler can take more than one dependency. So yeah, I think we are done here, and now we'll initialize this injector from the TODO app initialization, which will happen here, injector.init graph, and assemblies we will provide only one that we have. So yeah, we are done with the dependencies now. Now let's start creating UI. We'll use UIPilot here for navigation, and as you know, UIPilot requires us to define enum for each route. As we have only one route now, that is list screen, we'll define only one, and this also needs to be equitable. Yeah, now let's create a UIPilot object here. And here we need to provide initial route, and that will be list screen. That means whenever our app starts, it will show list screen first. So yeah, here we need UIPilot host, and one route map. That means like which view should be used for each route. So yeah, we'll use a switch here, and case whenever somebody asks for list screen view, we'll return basically to-do list view, which we don't have yet, but we'll create it soon. So this error will disappear soon. So yeah, we are done with basic configuration. Now let's create a to-do list view. Let me remove this preview. I'm not big fan of those previews. Yeah, so basically when user launches the app, they'll see this screen first, as we have provided it as initial screen here, and this should also disappear. Yeah, so basically for holding the state of to-do list view, we'll create a view model that is specific to this screen, and we'll extend observable object, as this class needs to be observed from the SwiftUI. So yeah, here we'll have task that we need to show in the UI. That will be an empty list, and then on init, what we'll do is we'll load this task, but those tasks are inside the task repository. So basically we'll need to create it here. So as we are using Swinject, we don't really need to create this task repository. So if somebody asks for dependency that is not provided in assembly, then it will throw an error. So yeah, we have task repository now. Now let's load our task. Let me create a separate function for that, and here I'll get it from task repository. Yeah, we are done. Now what we need to do is we need to create an object of Viewmodel, and then we can create a list view. So basically in list we'll provide a view model dot task, and so this task requires identifiable protocol, so we'll have to edit. So we'll also add equitable here, so if somebody is comparing tasks then they'll get right results. So yeah, we are done here. Now let's go to our to-do list view, and this should disappear. Yeah, it does. Now let's start with just a text and see if it shows up. We can add more fancy views later. Here we'll just show task.title, and then we'll run the app. And the build failed. Signing. Okay, so it's a signing error. Let me fix that. So yeah, as shown here, we are getting 3 tasks. Let's provide a really good name here. Navigation title should be task. Yeah, much more better. So this is just a text, but we need a button here as well to complete the task. So what we'll do is we'll create another struct for that. We'll call it to-do item, and what we'll do is we'll pass the task here and see how it goes. Now here I need to use to-do item and provide task. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, it's working fine. So now it's time to add that button. So we'll have to use here hashtag, and here we'll use a toggle button. So yeah, for toggle button we need configuration is on binding. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, it's missing label here. So we are just providing task. Now we'll need to provide is complete as well, and that will be task dot is complete. So yeah, we have a toggle button here, but it's not the way we want. We want checkbox. So let me add checkbox style. I'm not explaining this as we want to focus more on writing text rather than UI. Let me create instance of the checkbox style, and yeah, this is exactly what we want. But now for the toggle we are just modifying is complete, and it's not actually updating the item in task repository. So what we need to do is we'll need to pass callback from to-do item to to-do list view here, and from there we'll pass that to the view model that can basically update this task repository. So we'll begin by creating the function here. Let complete callback, which will basically provide the task with nothing to return. And here on change of is complete, we'll call that complete callback with the task. Yeah, So now we'll need to provide the callback here, that is complete callback, and new task. So yeah, we'll pass it to Viewmodel, which will basically update the repository. Let me create that missing function. So yeah, whenever we want to toggle the complete status of a task, what we'll do is we'll create a new copy, which will have ID of previous task and also the title of previous task, but the complete status will be opposite. And yeah, now we want to update it in task repository. We don't have a method yet, but we'll create it soon. And once we have updated it in repository, then we'll refresh the task. So yeah, let me add update function here, and yeah, here what we'll do is we'll first find the index of the task, $0.id task.id. So if when we know the index of the task, we'll update that task. Pretty easy, right? So yeah, that was it in repository. Now let's run the app and see how it goes. We have an error. Yeah, we need to provide the missing argument, and also here. Yeah, so we have list ready now. Basically the status is even toggling inside the task repository. So now it's time to write the test for this view model. So for that we'll first need to add a new test target. I'll call it my to do test. I'll change nothing and we'll click on finish. And once we have that, what we'll need to do is we'll create a new unit test class that will be to do list VM test. Basically all the tests related to this view model. So yeah, so we have a template with 4 methods here. The most important are this setup with error and tear down with error. So we'll get rid of these two. Setup with error, as mentioned here, is called before the invocation of each test method in this class. So that's very useful because we want to initialize our view model as we want to test it. So let's first start with what we want to test. We want to test that the tasks are loaded on init. So whenever we are creating a view model, we want to check that it has task from the task repository. So this is what we want to test, and we'll start by creating a view model. We'll first need to import our TODO module here so we can use those classes. Yeah, so basically we'll define view model and we'll initialize it here. As we want to compare the task item with the repository, we'll also need a repository here. And we can get it from the injector as we did inside Viewmodel. So that's the most amazing part about dependency injection, that you can get the same dependency at the multiple places. So we'll just say we need a task repository, and we are done. Now what we need to do here is very simple one. We'll get task from the task repository and we'll compare it with the task of Viewmodel. Now let's run this test and see if it passes. Yay, the test passed. And now let's another test that will verify that whenever we call a complete toggle on the Viewmodel, it actually updates the item in the task repository. So yeah, let's test it. Test toggle complete. We'll first start by getting a task from the task repository, the first one, and then what we'll do is we'll ask Viewmodel to toggle its status, and then what we'll do is we'll compare it and see that the task we get from the repository is actually opposite. So let's do that. Let new task is equal to task repository dot get task dot first. Okay, now what we need to verify is the complete status of this both tasks. Now what we need to verify is complete status of these both tasks are opposite. That's it. Now let's run this test and see if it passes. Actually it doesn't. Okay, so here we have mistake. We forgot to pass the new task that we created, and that's the beauty of unit test. You'll find and get things that otherwise you wouldn't have. So yeah, now let's run our test again and see if it passes. Yay, it does. Yeah, that's it. Hope you have idea now how unit test works. This is like done using dependency injection, and these are very simple tests. In the next video we'll add to-do list screen, and also if possible we'll add edit screen. From there we'll also implement the real database, maybe SQLite or core data, and then we'll save those tasks permanently, instead of like this will disappear when we run the app again as everything in memory. So yeah, that's it for today. Hope you learned something.